Thanks, Elaine. And Robert Kelly, mandatory compassionate leave if your pet dies. A lot of people watching this morning will think that's a ridiculous idea, but others would disagree. Where do you stand on it?
I think that's a difficult question, mandatory or not, but there's no doubt that people are very upset when their pet dies. In the pet crematorium we get a lot of people phoning us up, and usually they're crying, and they say as if it's the first time we've heard people crying. You know, I'm sure you have friends, I have friends who just said they couldn't turn up to work. Either you're a pet loving person or you're not a pet loving person. As a nation, we're probably split a bit in that if you look at the recent online survey, 52% of people said it shouldn't be mandatory, 31% said they didn't know, and the rest said yes.
Well, considering we live in a country where it's hard enough to get compassionate leave if a grandparent dies.
I think in business though, many managers will make a decision at a local level, and I'm sure that would be the case if an employee phoned in and said, you know, I'm very upset, my pet has died, I need to make some arrangements. Many managers would be accommodating, I feel, but that's a different thing to mandatory. Yeah,
I suppose there's no denying though the massive void that, you know, losing a pet can leave in a person's heart. I mean, they can be devastating. It can take months literally to get over the loss of
it can. I mean, there's a lot of emotion invested in pets for pet owners, you know, and you invest it, you open your heart, and an open heart is a vulnerable heart. So, you know, it is difficult for people. Often pets are family pets and they've been with the family for years, so they've gone through the teenage years, through boyfriends, through girlfriends, through college, through getting your first job, and then all of a sudden there's this big void in their life, and it can be difficult for people.
It could be, I mean, you could be sitting at your desk after the death of your pet and you could just be crying, and you know, you could be getting no work done anyway because of the loss. And also there's feelings of anger, I imagine, because pets don't live as long as us. I mean, the average dog, what, lives for about 14 years?
Well, that's the thing about pets, you know, that we outlive them, so we are going to encounter that they die. There are many reasons that people feel loss, but the gap that's there, the companionship. There was a TV program on recently about the secret lives of dogs, where they looked at separation anxiety from dogs just from their owners being away, and any of the owners that were looking at that were crying watching how upset their pets were because they missed them. So if they just missed them when they're gone down to the shops, you can imagine how we feel when they're gone.
How do you deal with people grieving at the Irish Pet Crematorium? I mean, you offer cremation services where people can actually, you know, have their dogs cremated in official caskets.
Yeah, we listen basically. You know, we're not a professional counselling service or anything like that, but people listen and they're quite happy to talk, and they want people who are like-minded just to hear them out. For example, you might have a little old lady bringing a dog in. I remember I was talking to her, she sticks in my mind, and she said, this is the last living link I had with my husband who died 3 years ago. So there are lots of emotional ties to a pet.
What do you recommend that people do afterwards with ashes, or, you know, to remember their pet?
That's a very personal thing for personal pet owners. I can tell you what people tell me they do, which is some people want to get closure. For example, they will pick a spot either on a favourite walk or in the garden and put them in and mark the spot with a shrub or forget-me-nots. Other people want to keep them in the house, or would have a casket, or we have picture frame caskets that can go on the wall where they're quite discreet. And some people just don't want to know and don't want the ashes back at all, and just, you know, grieve in their own way.
It takes about a week, is it, to get an animal cremated? It's
about a week, yeah. We work with veterinary practices throughout the country, and we collect from the veterinary practice, carry out the cremation and whatever casket the owners want, and bring them back to the veterinary practice, and typically that process takes about a week.
Do you think it's important that people maybe hold a little ceremony in their garden or wherever, just to remember the pet?
I don't know about the ceremony, but I think we're used to rituals when death comes to it, and they can be very comforting. And I think there is something about getting some closure with some ashes, whether you want to keep them or whether you want to bury them or scatter them. So I think for many people it is important. For example, we've had some people who've died, and there was a famous rugby coach whose pet had died and was going through the cremation process, and then he was killed in a car crash, and the family wanted the ashes back to put in the casket because they were inseparable through life and they wanted to keep them together. So there is a lot of thing about ritual and closure.
Okay, well, on that note, Robert Kelly, many thanks for talking to us this morning, and it's back to you in studio, Elaine.